We got a few codes here in this Allison. This one's a 4500 rugged duty service transmission. Now, he's having complaints about shifting. We have all these codes related to pressure control solenoid circuits, main module, solenoid performance, TCM input low power. But all these codes are inactive except for this one active one. Now, if they were all inactive, like an intermittent issue, then I would open up the freeze frame data to see when the latest codes are and how they failed. But since I have one that's active, this guy right there, I'm going to be going for that one first, just to test that, and then retest for the other ones, because they could be old codes stored from a while ago or whatever. But we'll go after the active code, which is our pressure control solenoid 1 circuit open. So first thing to do is grab a wiring diagram, and the second would be locate our TCM. So I got a wiring diagram here, which is nice because it shows this is our pressure control solenoid circuit 1. This basically goes from 71 and loops back around into 36. So I'm going to be testing these two circuits right there, wire 171 and 136, just to make sure all the wiring is good, and then after that I'll test the internal of the transmission, and then we'll test the TCM. But I'm going to go ahead and remove this 20 pin connector. Got our pinouts right there, which is really handy to have. And I'm going to go ahead and remove the TCM 20 pin connector and then locate the TCM. This is a big boy. Way connector here. Take a good look at the pins, make sure there's no corrosion. Looking good. While we're under here, just want to check the routing of the harness. See if we can find anything rubbing. Doesn't look too bad. Let's find that TCM. Alright, found our TCM. On this particular model, which is a 2016 Western Star 4900, it is right there on the driver's side, just below the modesty skirt and the chicken lights. So it looks like I'm going to have to remove this in order to get to it, which is a bit of a pain, but it is what it is. So let's go ahead and disconnect that, and we'll move on to our wiring checks. Stick that right there. Alright, here we go. So just like that 20-way connector on the transmission, this one's also an 8mm. There's a single bolt here holding this TCM harness onto the TCM. So we'll go ahead and remove that and inspect the pins. Okay. Pins are looking good. Just going to check on the inside of that TCM there with a mirror. Or I could cheat a bit and use the reverse or the face cam on my camera here. And they are all looking pretty good. Alright, on to our circuit checks. So I'll show you a little trick here, because basically we're going to test the whole harness from our transmission to the TCM. Instead of individually ohming out pin 6 to pin 71, pin 4 to pin 36, I already have the 20-way pin connector from the transmission off. I'm just going to take out a jumper wire and just jump these two circuits right here, right in the harness. That way there I could just test resistance between pins 71 and 36 and see if we got good resistance. If we do, well, that's really quick and easy to determine whether our harness is good or not. And if we don't, well then we could individually test them to see which one is actually bad. So I'm going to jump that, test the resistance at the TCM here, and if it's good, then I'm going to test it to ground, make sure we don't have a short to ground. And if all those two tests are good, well, then now we're looking inside the transmission or the TCM side of it. So let's get to it. All right, so I got that jumped. Number 6 is your high side driver, and number 4 is for your pressure control solenoid 1. And you do the same thing if it's for any of your shift solenoids or your pressure control solenoid 2, except obviously change pin. So high side driver number 6, the pressure control solenoid 2 is number 5, and the like. So yeah, you just need the wiring diagram, and I have that hooked up to my pins here, because as I've mentioned in other videos, you do not want to spread these pins. So get the correct pin terminal kit, or if you don't have it, then grab a wire, but only take a couple strands of wire to put in there so you're not spreading those pins, because you'll create all kinds of problems. And this just kind of loops around, goes back up there to create a jumper circuit. So now we just got to test the resistance at the TCM. Get out of here. So I'm on pins 36 and 71 of the TCM after jumping that 20 pin connector, and you can see you got 0.6 ohms, which isn't bad. So what I'll do is put my meter on min-max so it beeps whenever it makes difference in resistance, or you could have someone watch your meter while you wiggle the whole harness, just checking for any intermittent issues. I'll go ahead and do that. Oh. Let me reset this. So I want to. Okay, so I couldn't get any opens or anything while wiggling the harness, so we're gonna go ahead and just touch our meter to ground, see if we can find any opens or any short circuits rather. I'm gonna find a better ground than that, but yeah, next you'll want to just bring, it doesn't matter which one of these leads to ground, that way there you can just test for a short to ground. Okay, so I got my meter connected to ground while the other pin's still connected to that circuit. And I'm gonna go ahead and along the harness, just press the harness, move it, try to see if I can get a short to ground to occur in case if it's an intermittent issue, and go from there. Alright, so I couldn't find any problems with the harness, so we know that that's all good. So we'll just test the transmission connector, the internal transmission harness, and the solenoid. So I'm going to hook up my meter for resistance between pins 6 and 4, and we're going to test this circuit, see what we get. Okay, so this is a really handy graph because these pressure control solenoids read different with temperature. So the higher the temperature, the more greater resistance you're going to get. So today we're sitting at about like 80 degrees or so. So I should, you know, come up to my graph up here, the minimum maximum, and basically I should probably be getting between, you know, 4.5, 5 to like 5.5, 6 ohms. So I would that's kind of what I should be getting. But yeah, if the truck is cold soaked, like if you haven't been driving it, then it'd be your ambient temperature, whatever the temperature is outside. Now if the thing's coming off the road and the transmission's hot, well, then you got to hook up to the TCM and read what the internal transmission fluid temperature is at, and then go by this. So I'm gonna go ahead and test that internal harness and the solenoid right now and see if my readings are the same based on this graph. So that's a really handy tip there. Okay, so I'm on pins 4 and 6 for an internal transmission harness. We're getting 5.4 ohms. So that's pretty much right in spec. Now, sometimes these solenoids fail hot, so that could be a problem. But since we're kind of getting pretty much good resistance readings, it's leading us towards a TCM. So I'm going to see if I have a test TCM laying around, which would be the next step, is to install a test TCM. That way there you can install it. Probably not a lot of people have them laying around. Now, me being in this trade for so long, yeah, I got a test TCM. So, gonna install it and see if the code goes inactive, and reinstall it to see if the code comes back active. Reinstall this old one. But another thing you could do then, if you don't have a test TCM, is put everything back together, go on a road test, get the thing nice and hot after clearing the codes, see if the codes come back, and then retest it hot, like retest that internal circuit from pins 4 to 6 on the TCM when it's hot. That way there you'll know whether that solenoid's or the harness is failing hot. But other than that, yeah, just throw a test TCM on there. If everything's testing good when the solenoid is, or when the transmission is hot, well then you probably have a bad TCM. But now I would say when you clear the codes and the code comes back active right away, well, you know the reading's good on the TCM or on the internal transmission harness. You know your external harness is good. So put everything back together, clear the codes. If the code comes back active right away, well, you know you got a bad TCM because everything now is reading good. So it's only when you put it back together, clear the codes. If the code doesn't come back, then road test it, see if you can get the code to come back, fail hot. But yeah, like I said, if it comes back instantly, well, you got a bad TCM. Okay, so I went on a road test after I installed my test TCM. Couldn't get anything to act up. Came back, put the original one, plugged the original one back in, went on a road test. No codes are coming back, so I decided I was thinking probably a TCM failing intermittently since the transmission was hot and it still wasn't failing. But I was like, you know what, I'm gonna just go through the harness again, check all my rub points and all that. And I actually found something here when I cut the zip tie and pulled this out. On the back of that bracket there, this was rubbing. And I see a little something there. I'm not really sure if that's rubbed all the way through or what. But what I'm going to do is pull that harness apart right there and see if that might be the problem. Just the intermittently contacting, even though I did do all my wiggle tests and stuff. Yeah, I'm just going to pull that harness piece apart and see if that might be the issue. So just another reminder, even to myself, a visual inspection is definitely key to these things. So let's go ahead and pull the harness apart and see what we find. Alright, so I pulled that section of harness apart, and you can definitely see that this wire is rubbed right through the insulation. So that is probably our cause for the fault. It was rubbed through on the back of that bracket right there, or where it comes around and plugs into the TCM. So that's definitely rubbed all the way through. So this circuit was shorting out, and yeah, that was a good find. Glad I went back and kind of done a visual on all the kind of the rub points of this TCM harness, and yeah, found that. So again, the importance of looking. I'm surprised I never caught that during the wiggle test in the short to ground, but who knows, it could have just been rust buildup, and when the truck's going down the road, just the torque and the movement of the truck and the harness. Probably just, you know, we'll short that out and cause the issue. So anyways, that's that. Job well found.